The Young and the Restless spoilers. The truth came out not like a confession but like a detonation, ripping through everything that had once passed for peace in Genoa City. The DNA results, delivered in a single unassuming envelope, obliterated decades of assumptions and illusions. Noah Newman, pale and weak in his hospital bed, felt the air drain from the room as he read the words that would change everything. His biological father was not Nick Newman, but Matt Clark. The man he had been taught to hate, the man whose name was whispered as a curse in his family's history, was the one whose blood ran in his veins. The silence that followed was unbearable, thick with shock and disbelief. For a long moment, no one could breathe. Sharon's lips trembled as she tried to speak, but no sound came out. Nick's face, flushed with rage, twisted into something unrecognizable, a mixture of betrayal, disgust, and self-loathing. The room seemed to tilt, every molecule vibrating with years of lies that could no longer be contained. Nick's fury erupted like a thunderstorm. He lashed out at Sharon with words sharp enough to wound flesh, his voice hoarse from shouting. Every ounce of trust, every fragment of tenderness they had rebuilt over the years, shattered under the weight of his accusations. He called her a liar, a coward, a woman who had stolen his life. The betrayal, decades old yet freshly reopened, turned him inside out. When his gaze landed on Noah, the heartbreak twisted into something darker. He screamed that he had wasted years loving a son who wasn't his, that everything about their family was a lie. The moment the words left his mouth, regret flickered in his eyes, but it was too late. Noah flinched, as if struck. Sharon's sobs filled the room as she begged Nick to stop, her voice cracking with desperation. But he couldn't. The truth had poisoned him, and he couldn't tell where the pain ended and the anger began. Nick stormed out, slamming the door so hard that the walls seemed to shake. Sharon ran after him, calling his name, trying to explain that she had been young, terrified, manipulated, that she had buried that secret not out of malice, but shame. Her footsteps echoed down the sterile hallway, her tears blurring the world around her. But Nick couldn't hear her anymore. His rage had turned inward. Every choice he'd made, every moment he'd thought he was a good father, now felt like a lie. He saw himself as the fool of Genoa City, the man who had raised another man's son, the man who had failed to see the truth hiding in the eyes of the woman he once loved. Back in the hospital room, Noah sat in stunned silence, the DNA report still trembling in his hands. His whole life had been rewritten in an instant. The door creaked, and there he was as Matt Clark, or as he now called himself, Mitch Bacall. The man whose face Noah had seen in old photographs, in Sharon's nightmares, in Nick's angry silences. For a moment, neither of them moved. The tension was unbearable, a lifetime compressed into one fragile heartbeat. Then Noah rose shakily from his bed, eyes brimming with tears, and whispered a single word that broke through the years, "Dad." Matt's composure crumbled. His face collapsed into grief and disbelief as he crossed the room and pulled Noah into his arms. They clung to each other like two men drowning in the same ocean, one guilty, one lost, both desperate for something that could never truly be reclaimed. 30 years of separation dissolved into tears that neither could stop. The hospital machines hummed softly around them, the quiet witnesses to a reunion that was both miraculous and monstrous. For the first time, Matt wasn't the villain or the ghost, he was a father, holding the son he never knew he had. But beneath the emotion, there was rot. The man who now swore to protect Noah had been the same one who had nearly killed him. Sienna Bacall stood in the doorway, her heart breaking as she watched the scene unfold. The man she had loved, the man she had defended, was both savior and sinner. The revelation was too cruel, too tangled. She couldn't tell whether to cry from empathy or scream from betrayal. Noah's tears were pure, Matt's were poisoned, and hers were somewhere in between. Everything she thought she knew about her marriage was gone. The loyalty she had shown, the trust she had fought to preserve, all of it had been built on lies. The sight of Matt embracing his son, the raw connection between them, was beautiful in the cruelest possible way. It made her feel invisible. For the first time, Sienna realized she wasn't part of her husband's life, she had been part of his cover. When Matt finally spoke, his voice was trembling but resolute. He turned to Noah, still gripping his shoulders as if afraid to let go. "No one will ever hurt you again," he said. "From now on, I'll be the one to protect you." The words came out like a vow, but they carried a hidden weight, a self-condemnation he couldn't escape. Because everyone in that room knew the truth, he was the one who had put Noah in the hospital in the first place. The car crash that nearly ended Noah's life hadn't been fate, it had been Matt's doing. Whether by accident or intent, it didn't matter. The same hands that now promised protection had already dealt destruction. Sienna's expression hardened. She could no longer ignore what was right in front of her. The pieces of the puzzle she had dismissed as coincidence, the secrecy, the evasions, the late-night disappearances, suddenly aligned into a portrait of the man she really married. She saw the guilt that flickered behind his promises, the shadows that lived in his eyes. It was too much to bear. She turned away, her heart shattering quietly, her love for him curdling into something she couldn't name. Noah, too overwhelmed to understand the depth of the tragedy, clung to his father's embrace. His entire existence had been rewritten, he needed something to hold on to, even if it was a lie. Matt stroked his hair, whispering apologies that could never undo what he had done. For the first time, the great manipulator looked truly broken, not because he had been caught, but because he had finally seen the cost of his sins made flesh in the son who forgave him too easily. Outside, Sharon stood under the flickering hospital lights, sobbing into her hands. Nick was gone, swallowed by his fury, and the man she had feared for half her life was now sitting beside their son, calling himself his protector. The night felt endless, and for once, she had no idea what redemption would even look like. In that single, shattering moment, every storyline, love, hatred, forgiveness, folded into one truth: Genoa City doesn't forget, it only waits. And now, as Matt Clark's sins came full circle, the city waited again, because the storm he unleashed decades ago had finally come home, and the real reckoning was just beginning. The door to the hospital room burst open with a force that sent every nerve in the room shuddering. Sharon stood there, trembling with fury, her eyes red from tears but burning with something deeper, a mixture of terror and rage that had no words left to hide behind. The sight before her was unbearable. Matt Clark, the man who had once destroyed her youth, sitting beside her son's hospital bed like some kind of savior, his hand still resting protectively on Noah's shoulder. The image was obscene, a mockery of everything she had survived. Without hesitation, she lunged forward, shoving Matt so hard that the chair toppled behind him. "Get away from him," she shouted, her voice raw, almost unrecognizable. "You've done enough." The air cracked with the violence of it. Noah's eyes widened as his mother's rage tore through the fragile calm that had settled in the aftermath of the DNA revelation. Matt stumbled but didn't fight back. For once, the manipulator looked small, just a man stripped of his power, his secret, and his false sense of control. Sharon's hands trembled as she pointed toward the door. "You don't belong here," she spat. "Ever since you came back, everything has fallen apart. Nick's gone, Noah's hurt, and this family is breaking all over again because of you." Her voice wavered at the edges, cracking under the weight of years of buried pain. Noah rose from the bed, his hospital gown hanging loosely from his frail frame, his face pale but defiant. His voice shook, but his words were loud enough to pierce through the chaos. "Stop it, Mom," he shouted, tears pooling in his eyes. "Just stop pretending this isn't real. I know what the test said. He's my father." The declaration landed like a slap. Sharon froze, her mouth slightly open, as if the world had tilted beneath her feet. Noah's breath came in ragged gasps as he went on, each word sharper than the last. "You and Dad lied to me my whole life. You kept this from me because you were too afraid to face the truth. Nick walked out on me because I wasn't his blood. He didn't even look back. And now you're trying to take away the only person I have left?" The tears Sharon had been holding back finally broke free. You don't understand, she whispered, shaking her head violently. You have no idea who he is, what he's done. He's not a father, Noah. He's a monster. Everything that's happened, every bit of pain, started with him. Her voice broke into sobs as she tried to make him see, to pull him back from the edge of something irreversible. But Noah was no longer listening. His heartbreak had hardened into something more dangerous, resentment. Matt pushed himself to his feet slowly, his expression torn between guilt and desperation. He reached toward Noah, as if to steady him, but Sharon moved like lightning, stepping between them, her body the wall that had once saved her son's life. You will not touch him, she hissed. Not again. Not ever. The venom in her voice wasn't hatred, it was survival. Every nerve in her body remembered the boy she used to be, the nightmare she endured because of him, and now that man was standing in front of her, trying to claim the title of father. She couldn't let that happen. Not again. But Noah's anger was relentless. You can't keep me from him, he shouted, his voice breaking. I need him, Mom. I need someone who won't walk away. His chest heaved with emotion, his fists clenched at his sides. Nick's gone. You don't trust me. And I can't do this alone anymore. I don't care what he did before I was born. That's your past, not mine. I just want a dad. The words hit Sharon like a blade. Her heart twisted as she realized what her son was really saying, not that he wanted Matt, but that he wanted someone, anyone, to stay. Matt stood silent, the guilt etched across his face so deeply it was almost unbearable. He wanted to speak, to say that he was sorry, that he had changed, but Sharon's glare froze him in place. You don't get to talk, she snapped, her voice trembling with rage. You don't get to play the victim. You almost killed him. Do you understand that? You nearly killed your own son, and now you're standing here acting like you can protect him? Her words tore into him like knives, each one slicing through the illusion he had built. Sienna, still standing near the doorway, felt the room closing in around her. She watched the man she thought she knew fall apart under the weight of his lies, and she could no longer tell if she pitied him or despised him. Noah turned on her too, his voice raw and desperate. You don't get to make this choice for me, Mom. Maybe you can't forgive him, but I have to. I can't hate him forever for something that happened before I was even born. I need to know who I am, where I came from. I need to understand why all of this happened. His words echoed through the sterile room, filling every corner with grief. Sharon could barely stand. The sound of his pain was unbearable because it was the same sound she had once made, the sound of a child begging for something that would never come. Enough, she whispered finally, her voice hollow. You're not seeing clearly. You think this is about love, but it's not. It's about survival. She looked at Matt then, her expression hardening again. Stay away from him. You've taken enough from me. From all of us. Her hands shook as she reached for Noah's arm, but he stepped back, his eyes filled with betrayal. Mom, he said quietly, you can't protect me from this anymore. Matt took a cautious step forward, his voice breaking as he spoke. I know you hate me, he said to Sharon, and you should. But I love him. I didn't know he was mine, but now that I do, I can't walk away. Sharon's expression crumbled into something between heartbreak and horror. You don't get to love him, she said coldly. You forfeited that right the moment you hurt me. The tension was unbearable, a living thing that pressed against the walls. Noah collapsed back onto the bed, exhausted by grief, and covered his face with his hands. Sienna quietly left the room, her footsteps echoing down the corridor, her world collapsing in silence. Matt stood frozen in place, torn between guilt and paternal instinct, between wanting to stay and knowing he should leave. Sharon turned away, tears streaking down her face, her whole body trembling as she whispered, almost to herself, this ends now. For a moment, everything was still. Then Matt slowly turned toward the door, his eyes lingering on Noah one last time. I'm sorry, he said softly. For everything. And then he was gone, leaving behind a room filled with shattered truths and the echo of 30 years of pain. Sharon collapsed into the chair by her son's bed, clutching his hand, whispering that she loved him, that she only wanted to keep him safe. But the damage was already done. The past had finally caught up to all of them, and there was no turning back.